Check the description for the following discount codes. Seems to be a lot of these hybrid cockpits coming to market over the last year or so, and I guess it makes sense because if you're someone that likes both GT style racing or rally and Formula One, why not have a cockpit that can switch between all positions? It makes sense. They usually come with a compromise when it comes to rigidity and flex, because the ability to change positions inherently means they can't be quite as rock solid as cockpits that only offer one position, or one position that you can change to without having to, undo lots and lots of bolts and pieces of aluminium profile and sort of reposition them all and then do them all back up and it basically be a different cockpit. To have quick release, sort of hot swap ability between these seating positions always comes with a little bit of compromise. So we'll expect that with this cockpit also, but how much there is remains to be seen. The cockpit itself, GT Amiga hybrid cockpit, it's in the name, $499.95, 500 notes, without a seat. Obviously there's many seats you can choose from, bucket seats, recliner seats from GT Amiga, varying price points, shapes and sizes. You can look at that yourselves. The cockpit itself looks as it does here in this picture when it's assembled. So let's just make that full screen. And you'll probably be able to see we have a range of adjustment points for the pedal tray, from GT at the bottom all the way up to F1 at the top. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 different positions there. And then at the back on the seat, there is 4 front and 4 rear to allow you to adjust the angle of the seat to match the pedal tray. You've got these sort of angled uprights, and the pieces of aluminium profile across the bottom have also been sort of finished with an angled cut, and these little red inserts just to make it look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Again, we've seen this with other cockpits as well. It just adds something a little different, a little easier on the eye than just perfectly straight pieces of alley profile. Some people won't care, some people will. It's nice that it's there. It doesn't really take away from any of the functionality of profile, the adjustability, the customization you can have, because it is still all full of channels that you can put your T-nuts into and bolt other things to. Just not quite so much at right angles, say on these upright pieces here. I mean, you might even be able to straighten them up if you want. Who knows? I haven't put it together yet. We've got a shifter mount included in the picture here. I'll show you these in a second. Again, that looks very similar to the one you get with the Prime Lite and the full-size Prime. There's an image of it here, obviously fully assembled, with one of their bucket seats on. Again, so full adjustable pedal tray. We've got height adjustment for the wheel deck. The wheel deck is something that I'm initially not best pleased about, and I'll show you that in a second. But there's ways around the things I'm not pleased about. One of the bizarre things about this hybrid cockpit is they offer a Formula pedal tray edition. And if we just click on that, when I was having the conversation with the PR guy at GT Amiga, he said to me, "Would you like to review the F1 version, Carl?" And I said, well, to be honest, I don't really understand what that does. I looked at the picture like this. You can see what it does is give you a greater range of vertical adjustment, right? So more of an extreme F1 position, you might say, than you can get with the normal hybrid. And I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, well, if it's all the way up here, and the pedal tray is bolted onto these uprights, how does it go to a GT position? And I emailed back and I said, I don't really understand. It looks like we've just got a lot of adjustment from an F1 point of view, but at the sacrifice of the GT position. I said, because it looks like we now need to unbolt things if we wanted to lower the pedal tray down rather than just undoing the quick releases. And he comes back to me and he said yes. He said there's no GT position with this F1 version. And I sat there and I was like, well, it's no longer a hybrid cockpit if you can't go from F1 to GT. So I emailed back. I said, okay. I said, so how is it a hybrid cockpit then if you've gone for the F1 pedal tray? And I got this email back, and he's like, it's a very good point, Carl. You don't, do you? I said, no, you don't. And I could just picture him sat there in his office reading my email going, how is it a hybrid cockpit if it doesn't go from F1 to GT and it's only F1? I'm going, oh, good point, Carl. But yeah, we've got, so what they've done is they've sent me the normal hybrid cockpit and they've sent me the F1 pedal tray. So I'll assemble it as the hybrid cockpit and sort of review that, and then afterwards I'll remove the hybrid functionality of the pedal tray that allows you to go from F1 to GT, and I will install the dedicated F1 pedal tray, because perhaps some of you might like a dedicated F1 style rig and not a hybrid rig. It does retain the seat adjustment, so you'll still be able to adjust the angle of the seat to match the angle of the now extreme and very much F1 focused pedal tray. So they're really two very different products. One is a hybrid that does switch between the two, and one is not, even though this is called the GT Amiga Hybrid Cockpit Formula Pedal Tray version. Interesting. Anyway, that's what we're going to be looking at. There's the prices, there's the two sort of peculiar options we get there. As always with GT Amiga, there is a discounted link in the description. So we'll take a very quick peek at this full length of alley profile here. It's much like most other alley profile cockpits that you would see. This is the same sort of size profile as the GT Amiga Prime, and you can see we have those angle cuts I mentioned at the end. Now, the GT Amiga Prime cockpit is what I would say is the best sort of value cockpit for most people that you won't then need to upgrade again. You know, it's so solid, you don't get any flex. There's no real need to go for the full-size Prime, in my opinion. These are our little red racing stripes, our Go Faster stripes. And then here is one of the angle adjustment brackets for the seat. As you can see, this is probably 2 or 3 mil steel, I would say, so quite weighty and solid, which is what we like to see. Lots of bags of fixtures and fittings as always. And then we've got, these are for the pedal tray. Again, 2 or 3 mil, I'd say 3 mil steel, and marked, labelled appropriately for the adjustment there. The pedal tray also slides backwards and forwards. This is our shifter mount and its bracket. Again, this is, I think, what we get with the Prime and the Prime Lite, plenty solid. And again, this bracket is like 10 mil, so some girth to that, which is what we want. Now, the thing that disappointed me whilst unboxing this, which took about an hour because every single part is individually packaged and wrapped. Nice, but ball ache to unpack. This is our wheel deck. As you can see, it isn't very thick, and it has no real support around the sides. There's just this bracket here, and it sits on the top of your alley profile that goes between the two uprights and bolts in position, and it'll have to sit raised up a little bit to allow bolts from underneath to come through into your chosen wheelbase. Now, I think this is very similar to the one on the GT Amiga Titan and on the Prime Lite. It's just this bracket that's different. And whilst it will suffice for low to medium strength wheelbases, if you're one of those people that likes to run 20 to 30 Newton meters of torque, you will probably get some flex in this. So, my recommendation, if that is you, is not to worry, because you just don't have to use it. You can just bolt your wheelbase directly to the top of the aluminium profile using the available brackets that come with your wheelbase. You'll know if you've got high-end wheelbase, you can buy different types of mounts for that wheelbase that go to aluminium profile. Side mounts, front mounts, and even a bottom mount. So you don't have to worry about this. If you're using a 5 to 15 Newton meter wheelbase, probably fine. If you're using something over that and you actually run the torque up as high as what it can offer or close to it, then you just wouldn't use that. You'll bolt it directly to the rig, like you would do with any high-end wheelbase. So initially I was like, bit pants, and I was like, actually, it doesn't matter, throw it away, don't use it. You can, of course, do that with a low to medium strength wheelbase as well. You can still bolt that straight to the aluminium profile. You don't have to use that sort of wheel deck there either, which is probably what I do because it's just neater and tidier and gives you a more solid setup. Now, speaking of solid setups, having just kicked my heel on this pedal tray. This has got some heft to it, I can tell you. There's all your slots and pre-drilled holes for your various pedal setups. This is about 3mm thick. I think it's based on the original pedal tray for the full-size Prime. So you're not going to get any noticeable flex if you mount things correctly. Obviously this one is designed to have adjustment, hence the quick releases there. So it's not quite the same. But there is no sort of support across the middle or lengthways down the middle either. So, but plenty, you know, of 90-degree support around the edges. So you would, as long as you mount your pedals sensibly, you know, if you were worried about perhaps the brake pedal in the middle having a bit of flex, it probably won't, because I run one of the original Prime pedal trays, and even though I have their updated one, I never got round to fitting it because I have no issues with the original. It doesn't flex, or if it does, it doesn't flex that I notice anyway. So you probably wouldn't need to sort of worry about this. But if you were concerned, then instead of mounting your brake pedal sort of directly in the middle of this, it's a bit heavy, you would use a base plate that again is optional with most high-end pedals. If you've got a set of 3 pedals that mount individually, you can always buy a base plate that's usually 10mm thick. So you mount your pedals to that, then you mount your base plate to this, if it was an issue for you. I suspect for most people, it is not going to be an issue because it isn't for me. Now, what else have we got to show you? I think that's about it as far as bits and pieces here go. This is just a similar to what I just showed you, but this is for the seat, obviously. So it's another huffing great piece of steel that weighs a ton. Try not to walk into those anymore today, Carl. So I shall now spend a couple of hours putting this together, and we'll come back and have a look once I have done so. I think this was probably one of the longest cockpit builds I've done. I actually ran out of storage on my camera, and I'd emptied the storage first. Sort of 3/4 of the way through the build, had to go move it all off onto the computer and then come back and carry on. And that's partly because we've got so much additional steel work because of the adjustability going from F1 to GT and vice versa, that there's just so many more things to do up. And even, you know, the addition of these little red sort of pinstripes, they're just extra things that you have to put on. So it was quite a long build. The instructions were pretty straightforward. No real descriptive text. I'll just show you one page out of it. There's like a page like this for the pedal tray, a page for the seat mechanism, and then a booklet, multi-page for the main cockpit itself. So yeah, no descriptive text, just what you see there. And one of the things it tells you to do in those instructions is to fit the sliders for the pedal tray to the rig before you fit the pedal tray to the sliders. And when you do that, you'll find that the 2 innermost bolts are impossible to get into position. You would need to have the fingers of a baby to get through the gaps left available that you need to get these bolts up and through and then put a nut on top of. So when you build this, my advice and what I did, don't put the sliders on the cockpit first, put the sliders on the pedal tray, and then you can very easily get to the 4 bolts that hold the whole assembly to the rig. Aside from that, the instructions were clear and easy to follow. They actually recommend the same thing for the seat mechanism, so I did the same and fitted the sliders, fitted the seat to the mechanism, and then fitted the whole mechanism to the rig. It was just way easier. So aside from that, instructions were fine. We were assembling using these huge, weighty T-nuts, which is good to see, rather than the earlier ones that I see from GT Amiga with the sort of sprung ones. They were fine, but these are much heftier and much better quality. Not that I ever had the earlier ones fail, but you know, you're getting a little bit more for your money there. We've also, much like a lot of manufacturers now, got the sort of custom end caps that go on the aluminium profile, GT Amiga branded, and I particularly like, you know, these are cut to shape as if you were going to slide a T-nut through, which I think they do just fit. Yeah, they do, yeah. So if you needed to, you could. And they also gave us this rather fantastic pink Taylor's tape measure. And that's because the instructions reference the different lengths of profile and you need to measure them to make sure you've got the correct one. And also you can do that for the bolts as well. You know, there's M8 by 16, M8 by 12, M8 by 20. You've got your pink Taylor's tape measure. Thanks, GT Amiga. I'll keep that for measuring those bits and bobs. Now, before I do a close-up walk around, I'll show you how the adjustment works. I'm already going to say this is the best multi-driving position cockpit I have tested. It changes position easily and it's still solid. Example, I think it was, I'm trying to think which rig it was I tested. Might have been a Next Level Racing one. No, it was a Track Racer one. And the pedal tray had so much movement, like left to right, it was ridiculous because they hadn't reinforced it in that axis. This has basically no movement from side to side. I can probably force it if I really want to, yeah, a little bit, but you're not going to be doing that when you're racing. This is solid. Super impressed with that. And the seat mechanism is effectively just like a normal side-mounted bucket seat type scenario. So that's got no issues either. Not that there was on the seat of the TRX, it was really this that was the issue. So both of those are excellent. Now, as far as actually changing position goes, I'll do a close-up walk around, but I'll show it to you now. You can adjust the front and the back, obviously, to tilt it. So you slacken your thumb screws off a couple of turns, like this. You then got a handle at the front and the rear. You turn the handle, it retracts the pins and allows you to lift it up and down. And then you release that handle, and you probably heard the clicks. That's the sprung pins popping into place. You then do your thumb screws up so it can't pop out. And the same for the back end here, up or down. I mean, I've just put it in a position you would never use, but that's not the point. If I undo these, we'll put it back the other way. That is how easy it is to adjust the position. Just like that, and then just pinch your thumb screws up. Job done. That really is easy. And the same, exact same for the seat. It's a little more fiddly because you kind of have to look from one side to the other to get your thumb screws undone. But once you have undone them a little bit, same thing, a handle here, twist it, seat goes down, seat goes up, pins lock in place, nip them up. And then the same for the front. So that works really, really well. And it's solid, there's no issues with that whatsoever. The slider mechanism for the pedal tray, probably easier to operate from, well, you've got one for your seat, obviously, and then we've got the same thing here for the pedal tray that we can slide backwards and forwards. It's a little bit stiffer and probably easier to do perhaps with your feet on it like that. But again, that just locks where you want it to be, and it just works. So as I say, this is probably my favourite multi-driving position rig so far, just because it's still solid so far. Obviously, we'll put equipment on and test it in a minute. And it's quick and easy to actually change positions. So, yeah, quick walk around then, show you a close-up of everything. Then I'll get stuff installed and actually give it a test run. I actually think the sort of pinstripe red looks quite nice as well. You know, and also they've added almost like body panels to the front here. And when we get round to the rear, you'll see one there as well, just to tidy up the front end. You know, literally like a body panel. That's all it's there for, it's just a cover. So yeah, there's your thumb screws. Here's your handles that you pull to release your pins. There's your various different sort of holes that the pins slot into. That top one's actually not quite in it yet because I was mucking about. Same for the rear. And then we've got some sort of reinforcement inside here, which is what stops it from wobbling too much side to side. Yeah, these are the bolts that you have to do up to get this screwed down to the runners. And trying to do that through the gap in the end here, getting your finger was just way too awkward. Not so much this end, but that end was. It was impossible. So something else super important on aluminium profile rigs, for your upright sections, having thick plates like you see here, 10mm plates that bolt to the side, front and rear of the upright section, and then the upright section bolts to them. That is the way it must be done for a properly rigid wheel deck assembly. You know, and the same with these here. If you ever see aluminium profile rigs where these uprights are just sat on the top here with a corner bracket here and a corner bracket here, they are not a good way of doing it. You will get side to side wobble because there is nothing preventing that. The corner brackets just hold it down to these bottom lengths, but they do nothing for side to side movement, nothing at all. So this is the way it should be done. And you'll see that on all the high-end cockpits that don't have any sort of side to side wobble. I haven't done this up tight yet. I haven't even fitted that. That's what these bolts are for, because I need to fit this to a wheelbase first before I put it on, and then put those through there and there. And obviously I don't know what height I need it at either. So then we're moving along here. Again, we've got a pinstripe. Again, thumb screws and pins that pop into position. And then you nip up. The slider for that, a slider for that. Section across the middle just for rigidity. This is just RS9 seat, or is this the XLRS? XLRS seat I think I've got on here today. And then we come around the back here. Another body panel. This is just steel plate bolted from the top and underneath that just tidies up the back end of the rig. And you see the handle there for making the adjustments as well. So they've really thought, how can we kind of make this alley profile rig look less aluminium profile and less ugly? In fact, that piece I showed you earlier needs to just be tapped into there because that's what the ends would look like otherwise. In fact, I may as well grab it and put it on as we speak. And these are tapered to match the angle of the hole in the profile. You just push them down like that, and instantly it's tidied up compared to what it was before. So here's our shifter and handbrake and accessory assembly. Again, nicely angled brackets, everything's matching. This is the one off of the prime and the prime light. So again, 10mm thick plate, which this is bolted to. My preference is actually to put this plate on the inside, and then I have this either resting on the top here or underneath here for added rigidity. Not that it's wobbly or anything now, but I just might like to do things as solid as I can. So that's how I would do that. It doesn't stick in enough, you know, to get in the way of your legs or anything like that. So yeah, that's it. That's the rig fully assembled. There's all your adjustments for the wheel deck. We've got a slot here and a bolt here. So you slacken that, tilt this whole top section to where you want it to be. Again, as I say, if this flexes with your chosen wheelbase, just take it off, mount your wheelbase to the alley profile using side brackets, front mount bracket, whatever your options are for your particular wheelbase. You don't have to use this, because I would say this is the weakness of this cockpit, but for lower, medium strength wheelbases, might not be an issue. We'll see, because I am going to use it for testing. But I actually am really impressed with this rig. Obviously I haven't fitted the Formula pedal tray yet. I'll do that after testing this as it is and, you know, in the later part of the video. So let's get some sim equipment on. Let's have a little race. A quick point to note from the assembly. I've got 2 penny washers in my hand here. These are spare ones because they give you plenty of everything. But I actually forgot to install the penny washers that go behind the thumb screws. These here, and the same for the pedal tray. So when I was adjusting it earlier, when I was demonstrating it, it didn't move as smoothly as it does if you actually install the penny washers, because that prevents the plastic of the thumb screws touching the metal and dragging. So make sure when you assemble it, you pay close attention to the instructions, because it does show you to use these, but again, without any written text accompanying the pictures, it's easy to miss things like that. So that is a lot smoother. Now, we'll get to the Formula version, which is what I'm currently sat in a minute. But first of all, let's put up some footage of me doing my flex tests of both the wheel deck assembly and the pedal tray in its previous configuration. And much as expected, just like with the GT Amiga Prime Lite, there is basically no flex to speak of in the uprights or the aluminium profile portion of the wheel deck. If you see any movement here, it's the whole rig just slightly sinking in to my carpet. But what you will notice is a small amount of flex, less than I was expecting actually, on the wheel plate itself. As I commented a couple of times earlier in the video, it is thin. I knew it would be a weak point, and it is. But as I also said, I think for small to medium strength wheelbases, it's probably just fine. I didn't notice, because the footage you see of me flex testing is me putting way over and above what it would normally experience in use, you know, to try and make it flex using all my strength. So in use, it was actually fine. And as I say, you can always just bolt it straight to the aluminium profile. Pedal tray, similar scenario, no side to side flex or wobble, which is what I had in that TRX, I think it was. And nothing that I could tell underfoot for the sort of vertical or longitudinal flex, so front to back, where I'm applying stupid force to that brake pedal that you see in the clip. So that's a-okay as well. Literally nothing bad to say about that. Now, what is it? And I put up some footage of me driving now in both GT position and Formula position. So what I will say, whilst this footage is up, is, you know, the whole rig works perfectly. It's quick and easy to adjust exactly as it should be. That's all great. It's solid. It doesn't flex to speak of. Brilliant. But switching between the 2 positions, the GT position in its various sort of adjustments is absolutely fine. The Formula position isn't really as Formula as perhaps some of you might like, if Formula 1 is what you're into. I don't really think the pedal tray goes quite high enough, and perhaps the seat not even quite so much of an angle back as I would like for a Formula position. When the Formula position driving clip comes up, the seat is actually adjusted to the 2 lowest Formula markings. I ended up moving the front up 1 to give the seat more of a backward tilt. That's actually the position it's sat in when we cut back to me sat here, whenever I do that. That is a position the seat is in now, whereas in the footage it was level. And tilting it back a little bit is definitely the preferred way to go, because that kind of gives your legs a similar angle to where the pedals are as well. But so yeah, it does switch between the 2 positions really easily, really quickly. And there is definitely a difference between the pedals being on their lowest GT position and the highest Formula position. So you do definitely feel a change in driving positions. It isn't like the F1 position doesn't feel like an F1 position. It's just not as F1 as perhaps some people might like. And this is where this F1 pedal tray assembly option comes in that I'm sat in now. This sits probably a good couple of inches higher than the maximum height of the hybrid version, because this is not a hybrid version. This is just dedicated for F1, even though we're sat in the hybrid cockpit, as I mentioned earlier. In fact, we put a picture up of the other pedal tray assembly sat beside it. I'm wedging it on this side piece of profile, so it is at the same height for comparison. You'll see just how much higher this F1 pedal tray assembly option is. Now this pedal tray assembly is also completely rock solid, there's no flex at all. We've got 10mm uprights, aluminium profile side pieces. The plates that the pedals are actually bolted to are 3 or 4mm thick, the brackets are 3 or 4mm thick. It's fine, there's no movement, no nothing, rock solid. So whichever option you go for, you're getting a pretty much flex-free experience, which is great. Now this one, whilst it's definitely more F1 with the pedal deck being higher, the seat is in that, I'll say, slightly tilted back position. And of course, there's nothing stopping you, I might even be able to do it sat in it, going to the GT markings on the front to tilt it back even further. Where's that handle? Yeah, and give yourself even more of a tilt back. I mean, that's probably a bit much. You'd have to start adjusting all sorts of other things. But the adjustment is there, and as you just see, very quick and easy to do. Let's put that back to where it was, which is there, and then don't forget to lock your thumb screws. Although I dare say it's probably not going to move anyway, but that's super easy. But yeah, with this Formula One, if you look at the front there, in fact, let me give you close-up footage of it now, you'll see there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 slots of adjustment on those upright portions, and there are quick release handles to allow you to switch between those different 8 positions. The whole tray assembly then hinges on 2 brackets and 2 bolts that are in the main upright portions of the cockpit. You'll see that right at the very end of this close-up, where I zoom in on that bracket and bolt where it would rotate. So without undoing that bolt on each side to loosen these brackets, all you're doing is pivoting here. Now, as you can see, the moment you pivot that end down, your pedals are going to start falling. They're going to go level, first of all, but then the remainder of the adjustments have the pedals pointing down towards the floor, which no one's ever going to use. So unless you then undid these bolts and drop this down as well, that adjustment is pointless. And if you then do this and put the whole lot down lower, you're then in a GT position again. So whilst this is technically an F1 pedal assembly, and it does raise it up more, F1 style, it can be used for GT, just not as quickly as with the other pedal tray assembly. You do need to grab an Allen key and slacken these 2 off to move it down. Now, it's not as quick, but for the sake of Allen key in, half a turn it slack, Allen key, half a turn it slack, thumb screw slightly down. It will probably take you 2 minutes to change from this highest formula position to the lowest position that shouldn't be GT but that actually would be. So this can be used for both, it just doesn't change as quickly. It's a really weird scenario. It's like the other one changes very, very easily but has a limited range of motion. In fact, what they could have done, I'm just going to pull it into shot for a second. What they could have done was added extra height to facilitate it reaching the same height as that setup. And then this would be the perfect option because it would truly switch between the 2 extremes quickly and easily. Now, that might have introduced a bit of side-to-side wobble, but that could have been cured. I mean, this one doesn't wobble like that TRX did, so maybe even it wouldn't. But that could easily be cured by using thicker steel or perhaps some additional bracing. But that would have been ideal. Instead, we have this option, which can do both GT and Formula, just not as easily. But it does Formula better than that one does, because it goes higher. But it would do GT just as well if you don't mind pulling out your Allen key. I think, in all honesty, for me, if I was buying this and I wanted to switch between F1 and GT, I would probably go with this option because it is higher and gives you a more authentic F1 position. And I don't mind leaving an Allen key sat down here to just slacken that off to drop it back down. Probably. I don't know. I think a lot of people will end up probably sticking to one or the other and occasionally, going to the other option. I don't know though. That's, who knows what you want to do. But yeah, overall the cockpit is great and the adjustments are fast and easy, as I've said a few times, with both the seat and that pedal tray assembly. This one is a bit perplexing because you're never going to adjust anything on this without undoing these 2 bolts, because you'll just end up with your pedals pointing at the floor or possibly level. And if they're level, then the pedals themselves, like these ones are angled, are going to be very hard to press. So slightly weird design with this. And the fact that we got the options is also a little bit weird. And as you know, like I said earlier, when I spoke to the guy at DT Amiga, and I was like, so if this is a dedicated F1 pedal tray, how is the cockpit a hybrid cockpit anymore if it no longer changes to GT? And he was like, oh, good point, Carl. So I don't know, but it's good. However you choose to do it, whatever option you choose to go with, they both work well and pretty much flex free as far as I can tell. You'll have seen the footage. And you can mix and match and do whatever the hell you want. So a good cockpit. I do like the sort of angled design, the pinstripes, you go faster stripes, and the little body panels that they put the front and back. It all just tidies things up that little bit extra and makes, you know, the aluminium profile look a little less boring, a little less industrial. So it definitely gets the thumbs up, in spite of the peculiarities on offer with the different pedal tray assemblies. So there will be a link in the description as always. There's a discount for GT Amiga products, and that stacks on top of whatever offers they have on at the time anyway. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this interesting and useful, and take it easy.